The Fantasy Holics Podcast.
Jackson takes it himself. Look at him dart back and forth. Oh! He broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Your source for all things fantasy. So fill up your cup, sit back, and enjoy.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Holics Podcast. And today we are talking NBA basketball, and we are in the middle of our prospect mini-series where we are talking about one prospect for the upcoming NBA draft in each episode. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I'm here with Zach, aka the Fantasy Caveman. And today we are talking guard R.J. Hampton, who I know you are very high on. So you ready to rock and roll with some Hampton here?
Yes, let's talk some Hampton. I know you're not as high on him as I am, so.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. He's one of those guys that I could see fading away quickly, so I'll be interested to see how his NBA career goes. But giving you guys a quick overview, he was one of the top prospects coming out of high school, and he kind of took a different route than anybody that we've really seen. It's been a while since we've seen anybody take this route, but he kind of decided not to go to college. He had a lot of big offers. I remember he was considering Duke at one point, but he went to the NBL and New Zealand, and he played 15 games there instead of going to college. So definitely got a different professional experience there rather than playing some of the top competition in college. He averaged 9 points, 4 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. Only played 15 games, as I mentioned. He left early to focus on the NBA draft, and that was really the goal all along. He's a 6'4 guard, 175 pounds, only 19 years old, has a 6'7 wingspan. And I'll kick it over to you. What do you see as his strengths?
Like you mentioned, I think the fact that he is 6'4" to 6'7" wingspan, I think is going to be a big plus for him at the next level. He's a good pick and roll player. I think he's a really solid ball handler, and we're probably gonna touch on this when we talk about weaknesses a bit, but he was a very solid free throw shooter. I believe he was at around 74% with New Zealand last year, so very solid there, and that ties into his shot or his jumper that I'm sure we're gonna get into.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I picked up on for his strengths is really his court vision. I think he's a natural point guard. He's a good ball handler, good vision, a high basketball IQ, I would say. So I think those are traits that you really can't teach somebody. They're just something you're born with. If you're ball handling, you can work on, but more basketball IQ and the court vision that he has. I think he's a natural point guard, which is interesting for his size. A lot of times natural point guards are a little shorter than that, don't have that big of a wingspan. So he's really kind of interesting. As far as weaknesses go, his mid-range shooting needs a little bit of improvement. He drives to the basket, but he struggles to finish pretty frequently. 3-point shooting, he takes a lot of bad shots, a lot of contested threes. And it kind of goes back to that Steph Curry kind of game. People are taking a few steps past half court and chucking up threes. But not everybody can make them like Steph. And I think R.J. Hampton kind of falls into that mold a little bit. He needs to learn to take better shots. He's not necessarily a bad shooter. His percentages show that he only shot 40% from the field overall, so that's really not great. But, and I'll let you touch on this because you mentioned this earlier. His mechanics aren't bad. It's just taking better shots and being more consistent, I think.
I think he said I think the part of the low field goal percentage, especially from 3, attributes to his poor shot selection, which is something you can learn to take better shots. That's something that that's something you can improve on. And like I mentioned with the free throw percentage, the fact that he shoots 74% from the free throw line is a solid indicator that his form's not broken. It's a solid form. It's smooth. I just think he has there might be maybe some minor mechanical things possibly, but if he just is smart and takes better shots, I definitely see that 30% 3-point percentage probably it would come up quite a bit.
Yeah. And I'll dive next into an NBA comparison. I like to give a few different examples because I like to be kind of all over the board. So the first one, this is kind of his floor, and this is what I worry for him. It's Dante Exum. He was another, if you remember him, coming from overseas, another lengthy guard. He had good court vision, didn't have the greatest success shooting overseas. So I really think that's a floor for him. Exum hasn't really found a ton of success in the NBA. He's kind of bounced around and been a bench guard for teams, but I see a little bit of Exum in Hampton. So I hope that's not the case, but I think that's kind of a floor for him. Going for some better players, a guy like R.J Mayo. R.J Mayo developed a more consistent shot than R.J Hampton has, but kind of once again a 6'4", 6'5" guy with some good length. And then just in terms of his court vision and high basketball IQ, I really think Hampton's role long term is just being a natural point guard. Don't move him around to the 2-3, even though he has that good size. Maybe defensively you can create some mismatches. We haven't talked about his defense, and really he's not the strongest or weakest defender. I would say he's just kind of average at this point in his career. So, but based on his length, I would keep him at the 1, make him a natural point guard. So in that regard, he reminds me of Lonzo Ball and Ricky Rubio, just guys that have the ball in their high hands, really high IQ players, great passers. He's a great passer, good ball handler. And you and I were going back and forth about Lonzo earlier. Lonzo was terrible at shooting coming out of UCLA, and we saw his emergence last year. And I could see Hampton, and Hampton already has better form than Lonzo had in college. So I think that Hampton could develop into something similar as to Lonzo Ball this season as well.
Yes, totally. And I'll give a couple of guys as well this time. I'm gonna start with his floor. I like a Jamal Murray comparison. I think Jamal Murray is not the greatest defender either, and neither are RJ. I think defensively they're pretty similar. And I think Jamal Murray's not the greatest 3-point shooter either. I believe this season that got suspended, I think he was somewhere around 34, 35%. Murray was, and I think if R.J. Hampton just improves his shot selection more than anything, I think he could easily be in that 35, 36% 3-point range. And as far as his ceiling, I'm really high on him. So I'm gonna throw Russell Westbrook out there. I know that's a lot. That's a hefty expectation to put on him. But I'm just really high on him. I know we haven't mentioned this yet, but he's really he's quite raw. And I will say that, and this might be the first prospect that we're talking about when we're talking about a guy not quite being NBA ready yet. I mean, he still has to fill out his frame and whatnot. But I just think with Russell, he attacks. Mm-hmm. I just think of the attack. You see Russell Westbrook, and he's attack. Yeah. And I think you see that in R.J. Hampton as well. And I think, especially with Russell Westbrook, I don't think Russell Westbrook's the greatest defender either. We did get a little bit off topic. We're not going to get into the Rockets defense as a whole, but we're just throwing that out there. So I think him and Westbrook and Hampton have a very similar defensive ability as well.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of be more like the ceiling, but I can see the potential is there for him to reach that level.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I'm not quite as high. Like I said, I think he's more of a natural point guard. But for best fits, I have the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. Both of them. So the Timberwolves have D'Angelo Russell. I personally think Russell plays better off of the ball. I think you could put the ball in Hampton's hands allow them to be what they lost when Ricky Rubio left through free agency. That's kind of the role that I see for him there. With the Nuggets, it's kind of funny. You already mentioned Jamal Murray. I think the same thing about Jamal Murray. I think Jamal Murray should be more off the ball. So I think you put the ball in Hampton's hands. And I think that's what you're going to be looking at. I'm kind of hesitant to say that Hampton's going to be a really strong scorer in the NBA. But I think just based on his IQ and his vision and his natural point guard instincts, I think he'll carve out some sort of role. It's just how much he can develop his offensive game that'll take him to that Russell Westbrook level that you mentioned.
Yeah, like you said, I think he can. He has, like you said, he has the vision and everything. So that's why I see the Russell Westbrook comparison. Russell Westbrook knows how to set up his teammates. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm gonna go with the Detroit Pistons, and I say this because if you look at their point guard situation, it's 31-year-old Derrick Rose. That's it. I don't think you can trust Derrick Rose to stay healthy. And I think not only does R.J. Hampton give you a solid bench up, I think especially since Rose is still there, it allows Hampton a little bit more time to grow into form and kind of work on his game so he can be that point guard leader.
Yeah, I would agree. Any other notes you want to make before I wrap it up here?
Nope. I think we covered it.
Yeah. So that's all that we have for today's episode. We'll have another episode coming out this week, so make sure you tune in for that. This has been another episode of the Fantasy Holics Podcast, NBA edition. If you don't already, make sure you like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter at FantasyHolics1, and make sure you check out our new website, thefantasyholics.com. We'll see you guys next time.
Yep.